she stood beside James Bond, not behind him. In a cinematic universe built on charm, danger, and seduction, Pussy Galore was something else entirely. When Goldfinger hit theaters in 1964, audiences were captivated not just by the plot, but by the woman in the leather flight suit who refused to be tamed. With her piercing gaze and sharp wit, Honor Blackman became an icon overnight. To the world, she was the ultimate screen siren. Fierce, poised, unforgettable. But what most never saw was how quickly she stepped away from it all. No tell, all memoir. No desperate comeback. No spotlight. She walked away at her peak on her own terms, and then disappeared into a silence that puzzled even those closest to her. Why did she turn her back on the very industry she had conquered? What happened to the woman who had once dared to challenge both James Bond and the system that created him? The answer lies not in what she said, but in everything she never revealed. Before she ever stood toe-to-toe with Sean Connery, Honor Blackman was already making waves. Born in 1925 inches London, she entered the world of acting not through privilege, but sheer perseverance. With a voice like cut glass and a presence that defied expectation, she began her career in the shadows bit parts, brief appearances, the kind of roles where names rarely linger in memory. Then came Cathy Gale in the Avengers. Clad in black leather, delivering judo throws and sharp comebacks, she wasn't just a television character, she was a cultural shift. In a post-war Britain still steeped in male dominance, Cathy Gale was intelligent, physically strong, and unapologetically assertive. The press called her a revolution in heels, but it was in Goldfinger where the world truly knew her name. As Pussy Galore, she was the Bond girl who didn't flirt, she pushed back. Her performance was electric. Suddenly, she was everywhere on red carpets, magazine covers, talk shows. A symbol of a new kind of woman, elegant but dangerous, feminine yet unyielding. And then, the headlines quieted. There were no scandals, no public breakdowns, just absence. The cameras stopped rolling, but the questions had only begun. But behind the fame, something was slowly breaking. She grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Plaistow, East London, during a time when ambition in young girls was quietly discouraged. Honor Blackman was not born into privilege. Her father was a civil servant, her mother a homemaker. But there was something in her from the start, a defiance, a posture that seemed to say, "I won't be boxed in." At 15, after receiving a gift from her parents, a choice between a bicycle or acting lessons, she chose the latter. That decision would mark the quiet ignition of a career no one in her neighborhood could have predicted. She enrolled in the Guildhall School of Music and Drama while working as a clerk to support herself. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fast, but it was hers. Her early career in film was filled with small roles in post-war British dramas and noir films. She didn't mind. She studied every set, every director, every line of dialogue like it mattered. It was craft over fame, and that discipline would become her signature. The turning point came with the Avengers. Stepping into the role of Cathy Gale, she found not only her breakout character but her voice. The writers wanted her character to be clever, quick, and calm under pressure. She added something more, physical power and intellectual command. Audiences, particularly women, saw someone on screen they'd never seen before. A woman who didn't seek validation from men, who could throw a punch and an idea in the same breath. This was no accident. Honor had trained in judo. She performed her own stunts. She didn't pretend to be strong, she was. But the spotlight has a way of demanding more than talent. It asks for compromise, and she was about to find out just how much it would cost to keep saying no. The world saw Honor Blackman as empowered, magnetic, utterly in control. But behind the scenes, that same strength often made her a target. In an industry that preferred its actresses agreeable and its Bond girls ornamental, she was neither. She refused to be tamed, and she paid for it. At the height of her fame, producers called her difficult. Not because she demanded more money or caused delays, but because she had opinions. She questioned scripts. She requested rewrites that gave her characters dignity. She refused to take on roles that diminished women, even when they came with fat paychecks. In private correspondence, later revealed through archives, one studio executive wrote, "She's brilliant, but she makes directors nervous. She thinks too much." She was offered to return in future Bond films. She declined. When asked why, she famously said, "I'd already done the best one." The truth was more layered. She didn't want to be remembered only for one role, or for serving as a glamorous backdrop to a man's story. Her marriage to actor Maurice Kaufman suffered under the strain of her career. They divorced in 1975. She adopted 2 children and raised them largely outside the blinding lights of the entertainment world. But stepping back came with emotional tolls, loneliness, isolation, and the quiet grief of being slowly erased by an industry that once celebrated her. Honor also spoke publicly about her discomfort with celebrity culture. She didn't attend Hollywood parties, avoided tabloid headlines, and found the obsession with appearance in later years dehumanizing. She turned down a CBE from the British monarchy, a rare and bold move, saying she couldn't accept honors from a system rooted in colonialism. In her refusal to play the game, she became something both revered and rejected, a woman who wouldn't surrender her voice for approval. There was no single moment when Honor Blackman vanished from the spotlight, no public scandal, no on-set breakdown. She simply faded away by choice, and that made her absence all the more mysterious. As the decades passed, the industry she once challenged moved on, leaving behind only the echo of her voice and a few iconic frames. In interviews from the late 1980 seconds and early 1990 seconds, she appeared sparingly, never bitter, but noticeably distanced. She spoke more of books than of scripts, more of her garden than of the red carpet. To some, it seemed like peace. But those who knew her privately suggested something deeper, a quiet disillusionment. She had watched peers compromise, reinvent, or attach themselves to younger stars for relevance. She refused. Roles offered to her became fewer and less meaningful. She rejected them anyway. The woman who once redefined what a female character could be was now offered roles as doting mothers, background figures, or wise old women with no bite. She declined almost all of them. Behind closed doors, friends described her as guarded, even with those she trusted. In a private letter uncovered after her death, she wrote, "The older I get, the more invisible I become. But I suppose it's easier to be unseen than misrepresented." She gave no farewell tour, no memoir, no grand documentary. She didn't want to be mythologized. She wanted to be left alone. In her later years, she lived quietly in Sussex, far from film sets and press interviews. And yet, the silence was deafening. For a woman who once commanded attention with just a look, her disappearance raised more questions than answers. Was it dignity? Was it heartbreak? Or was it a final act of control, a decision to define her ending before anyone else could? In her final years, Honor Blackman chose distance over display. While many of her contemporaries returned to the screen, sought retrospectives, or embraced a second wave of fame, she remained still not forgotten, but deliberately quiet. She made occasional television appearances, mostly in British dramas, but they were rare and carefully selected. She moved to a cottage in East Sussex, where the spotlight couldn't reach. No paparazzi stalked her driveway, no scandal circled her name. What remained was a woman who had lived several lives in one body and seemed content to leave most of them in the past. She continued to read voraciously, responded to fan mail with warmth, and maintained her political convictions until the very end. In April 2020, she passed away peacefully at the age of 94. Her family announced her death with a simple statement: she died of natural causes, at home, surrounded by her loved ones. There was no media circus, no long list of celebrities weighing in, just quiet acknowledgement and sincere remembrance. But for those who had followed her, the silence felt profound. She had walked away from stardom decades before, and now she had slipped away from the world in the same fashion, with dignity and on her own terms. What made her final act so powerful wasn't its drama, it was its refusal of spectacle. While others fought to stay in the light, she had long ago decided she didn't need it. The world may have moved on, but in those who remembered her, there lingered a sense that something fierce and remarkable had quietly gone missing. Honor Blackman never asked to be remembered, and yet, she is not as a symbol of an era, but as a woman who refused to conform to it. For some, she will always be Pussy Galore, the Bond girl who met James Bond with a smirk and a challenge, not submission. For others, she is Cathy Gale, the original female action figure on British television, who wore leather not for allure, but for armor. But her legacy isn't just in the roles she played, it's in the roles she rejected, in the lines she refused to say, in the scripts she walked away from, in the silence she embraced when the world expected noise. Younger generations of actresses, those who speak up, stand firm, and demand better owe more to her than they likely realize. She was doing it long before it was safe, or popular, or rewarded. And while Hollywood didn't always know what to do with her, time has made her defiance feel prophetic. Her name may not trend. Her face may not be plastered across streaming platforms. But in the undercurrent of strong, self-defined female characters that now populate our screens, there is a trace of honor, subtle, unshakable, and fiercely her own. Fame never defined her because she never let it. While others clung to it, Honor Blackman treated celebrity like a coat, useful when needed, but never mistaken for her skin. She stepped into the spotlight not to bask in it, but to shape it, to show that women could be powerful, principled, and unapologetically sharp. And when that light no longer reflected who she was, she walked away. Her story is not one of tragedy, nor is it a triumph in the traditional sense. It is something rarer, a woman choosing herself in a world that constantly demanded she be someone else. And that choice, quietly made again and again, became her greatest performance. We remember her not just for what she gave us on screen, but for what she withheld off it. In the silence she left behind, there is room to reflect on the roles women are offered, on the voices that go unheard, on the cost of integrity in a world obsessed with applause. What do you remember about Honor Blackman? If she were still here, what would you ask her? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters more than you think. Like, share, subscribe. Fame and shadows. Every star has its story.